Trump announces tariff plans of up to 25% on automotive imports. And Brazil-Japan boosts ties amidst US-China new Cold War. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Brendan Lepore. United States President Donald Trump on Wednesday announced plans for long-promised tariffs of up to 25% on automotive imports, widening the global trade war he kicked off upon regaining the White House this year, in a move auto industry experts expect will drive up prices and slow down production.
And we're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. And this is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at, and we go to 25%.
Trump, who sees tariffs as a tool to raise revenue to offset his promised tax cuts and to revive a long-declining U.S. industrial base, said the new import taxes will go into effect on 2nd April. It is also the same date he plans to announce reciprocal tariffs aimed at the countries responsible for the bulk of the U.S. trade deficit. Collection of the new auto tariffs would begin on 3rd April. Since taking office on 20th January, Trump has announced and delayed tariffs on Canada and Mexico for what he alleges is their role in allowing the opioid fentanyl into the U.S. Visiting Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva met with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba on Wednesday, where the two signed bilateral agreements and agreed to strengthen ties as Brazil seeks new market opportunities and improve trade between the two countries. The Brazilian leader said that the meeting with Japan came during a historic moment and referred to the trade war between the United States and China as a Cold War. Ishiba said at a joint news conference that the two countries launched a partnership focused on peace and multilateralism, and also said that the two countries agreed to pursue talks on beef import from Brazil. The two countries released an action plan that outlines measures to promote their strategic and global partnership over the next 5 years. This year marks the 130th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Japan and Brazil. Lula's visit comes as US President Donald Trump reshapes trade policy and imposes tariffs on several countries. Lula will travel to Hanoi, Vietnam later today for the second part of his trip to Asia. British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves said on Wednesday that she had rebuilt a £9.9 billion fiscal buffer that was wiped out by weaker economic forecasts and rising borrowing costs since her first full budget last year. The public finances have been strained by slow economic growth and higher than expected borrowing costs in financial markets, driven largely by the policies of US President Donald Trump. Without measures taken by the government, Reeves said the government would have faced a deficit of £4.1 billion.
As a result of the steps that I am taking today, I can confirm that I have restored in full our headroom against the stability rule, from a deficit of £36.1 billion in 2025-26 and £13.4 billion in 2026-27 to a surplus of £6.0 billion in 27-28, £7.1 billion in 2028-29 and a surplus of £9.9 billion in 2029-30.
Reeves is aiming to balance day-to-day public spending with tax revenues by 2030. In her first full budget in October, Reeves left herself £9.9 billion of leeway to hit that target, lower than the average headroom of finance ministers dating back to 2010. The Philippine House of Representatives on Wednesday formally served the motion to the office of the Vice President notifying Vice President Sara Duterte of the impeachment proceedings initiated against her. According to a statement, the entry with motion to issue summons was received by the OVP at 11:20 a.m. local time on Wednesday at its office on the 11th floor of Robinson's Cybergate Plaza, Mandaluyong City. The motion received by the Senate on Tuesday requests Senate President Francis Escudero to issue a writ of summons to Duterte, directing her to respond to the verified impeachment complaint within 10 days of receipt. House Deputy Majority Leader Lawrence Defensor defended the prosecution panel's decision to request a summons, asserting that it is within the bounds of law and the Senate rules on impeachment trials. He acknowledged Duterte's current presence in The Hague, Netherlands, where her father, former President Rodrigo Duterte, is detained in connection with the charges he is facing before the International Criminal Court. However, Defensor highlighted Duterte's obligation to address the impeachment proceedings. The impeachment complaint, endorsed by 215 members of the House, was transmitted to the Senate on 5th February, in accordance with Section 3, Article 11 of the Constitution. A Russian military court on Wednesday handed down long prison sentences to 12 members of Ukraine's Azov regiment, which led the defense of the city of Mariupol in the early months of the war and is designated as a terrorist organization by Russia. The defendants, charged with terrorist activity and with violently seizing or retaining power, were sentenced to between 13 and 23 years in prison. The Azov regiment, which is banned inside Russia, has been a special focus of Russian anger, often characterized by Moscow as a fanatical grouping of Russia-hating neo-Nazis. The regiment was founded by a hardline nationalist, Andrei Biletsky, but subsequently disassociated itself from his politics. For many Ukrainians, Azov fighters are heroes who came to symbolize the spirit of national resistance, clinging on in the devastated ruins of Mariupol as Russia besieged the port city between February and May 2022. Russia said nearly 2,500 eventually surrendered, emerging from their refuge in a vast network of bunker tunnels beneath the city Azovstal steelworks. The Kremlin said at the time that President Vladimir Putin had guaranteed that they would be treated according to international standards. Prior to Wednesday's sentences, the head of Russia's State Investigative Committee said earlier this month that Russian courts had so far convicted 145 Azov members. As South Korea scrambles to contain worsening wildfires, workers in the Ponchong Temple in Andong have been attempting to move valuable artifacts to protect them from possible damage. That's after another ancient temple, the Gonza Temple, was completely destroyed by the blazes. The South Korean Heritage Service announced that a total of 15 historical artifacts have been relocated from major temples in North Gyeongsang Province. These temples are part of 7 Buddhist monasteries recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Out of the 30 buildings in these ancient temples, only 9 have survived the fire. Of the 15 relocated artifacts, 10 have been classified as national treasures. So far, 8 cases of damage have been identified due to the fire. As a protective measure, several artifacts have been covered with fireproof tarpaulins, such as Bonseong Temple, which is believed to be the oldest wooden structure in South Korea. Meanwhile, all the valuable are being taken to Gyeongju National Research Institute of Cultural Heritage for safety measures. Strong winds intensified out-of-control wildfires in 2 western Japan prefectures on Wednesday, burning through over a cumulative 900 hectares and leaving at least 15 buildings destroyed. The fire in Ehime Prefecture has burned over 410 hectares in Imabari and Saijo, engulfing 7 houses and 2 warehouses. In Okayama Prefecture, approximately 540 hectares have burned in the cities of Okayama and neighboring Tamano, burning another 6 structures. Firefighters and the Ground Self-Defense Force were working to control the blazes that were first reported Sunday afternoon in both prefectures. The Fire and Disaster Management Agency has put in a request to 8 prefectures for emergency firefighting personnel to be sent to Imabari. Imabari and Saijo have issued evacuation orders to nearly 7,500 people across over 3,800 households, while similar orders have also been issued in Okayama and Tamano. Meanwhile, a separate fire in the city of Miyazaki that began on Tuesday was brought under control Wednesday evening, with the city lifting evacuation orders for 70 households in the area. The fire burned through approximately 50 hectares. According to the agency, there were no reports of injuries or demolished buildings. Bolivian President Luis Arce declared a national emergency on Wednesday after torrential rains and severe floods left more than 50 dead and displaced more than 100,000 across the country. All 9 of Bolivia's departmental region have been affected by the heavy rains, with one being designated in a state of disaster and 3 others in a state of emergency.
En vista de todo lo que está ocurriendo y que han sido gran parte también coberturados por los medios de comunicación, estos desastres naturales nos están exigiendo la declaración de situación de emergencia nacional. Hoy acabamos de emitir el decreto supremo correspondiente.
Bolivia's Meteorological Service said several orange and red alerts for river overflows that are typically issued in February have been issued in March this year and extended until April. The state of emergency will allow the government to purchase supplies and facilitate the deployment of resources. Thousands of soldiers have been deployed around the country to help distribute aid to heavily impacted areas. Bolivia, with a population of over 12 million, typically has its rainy season from November to March. Coming up next, at least 6 killed in Pakistan attack. Stay with us. But first, Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan flew into Khartoum Airport and toured the presidential palace on Wednesday in a demonstration of the army's control over the heart of the capital. Footage released by his ruling council showed him walking around the presidential palace and the surrounding area alongside joyful military staff. It happened as the Sudanese army drove its rival Rapid Support Forces RSF from most of Khartoum. It represents a major military gain, though the wider war looks far from over. Footage released by the Sudanese army shows Burhan on board a helicopter. An army statement said his flight into the airport was the first to land there since the outbreak of war in April 2023. The army also said it had gained control of a major RSF base south of the capital that it said was the paramilitary group's last major stronghold in Khartoum state. Separate footage released by the Sudan Sovereign Council shows Burhan arriving at Khartoum airport and being greeted by military staff. At least 6 were killed in an attack in southwest Pakistan. The attack targeted bus passengers based on ethnicity, marking the latest incident in the rising violence in the region. Pakistan is facing a separatist insurgency in Balochistan. Military groups target national security forces, foreigners and outsiders in the province, which borders Afghanistan and Iran. According to authorities, dozens of militants launched attacks in several districts of the region. The groups set up roadblocks on major highways and inspected vehicles. Meanwhile, in some areas, attacks are still ongoing. Earlier, in early March, Balak ethnic separatists attacked a train carrying 450 passengers, besieging it for 2 days and killing dozens. A few days later, at least 5 paramilitary personnel were killed in a suicide attack using an explosive-laden vehicle. Both attacks were claimed by the separatist group Balak Liberation Army. Lead negotiators for Germany's Conservative Christian Democratic Union (CDU), Christian Social Union (CSU), bloc are to resume talks with the centre-left Social Democrats (SPD) on Friday with the aim of forming a viable coalition. The three parties announced in Berlin on Wednesday. The general secretaries of the three parties said in a joint statement, hard work lies ahead of them, but they are continuing to tackle this task in a solution-oriented and constructive way. CDU leader and likely future Chancellor Friedrich Merz, CSU leader Markus Söder, and SPD co-leaders Lars Klingbeil and Saskia Esken are to join the respective delegations on Friday.
Was ich aus den AGs höre, ist ermutigend. Gleichzeitig gibt es offenkundig Dissenspunkte. Das liegt in der Natur der Sache. Und diese Dissenspunkte werden dann in der Steuerungsgruppe beraten. Uns geht es darum, dieses Land besser zu machen. Wir sprechen von einem Politikwechsel. Wir haben
Further talks are to take place in confidentiality in the various party headquarters in Berlin. The parties aim to strike a coalition deal by the Easter holidays in April. In the February 23rd elections, the CDU-CSU alliance secured 28.5% of the vote, with the third-place SPD managing just 16.4%. The Brazilian Supreme Court ruled on Wednesday former President Jair Bolsonaro will stand trial for allegedly conspiring to overthrow the government after he lost the 2022 election. A five-judge panel decided unanimously to put Bolsonaro on trial. If found guilty in the court proceedings expected later this year, Bolsonaro could face a long prison sentence, isolating the far-right firebrand who has avoided naming a political heir. In his opening remarks on Wednesday, Justice Alexandra de Moraes, who is overseeing the case, screened dramatic footage of Bolsonaro supporters storming government buildings in violent scenes that unfolded just a week after the inauguration of President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in January 2023. Moraes cast that insurrection as the result of Bolsonaro's systematic effort to discredit the election he lost and then conspire to overturn using violence with the help of senior military officers and cabinet members. Bolsonaro, a former army captain who served as Brazil's president from 2019 to 2022, is accused of 5 crimes, including an attempt to violently abolish the democratic rule of law and a coup d'etat. He has denied any wrongdoing and denounced the case as politically motivated. Thousands of Romanians gathered in the capital Bucharest on Wednesday to protest the December cancellation of a presidential election and the banning of its far-right frontrunner from standing from office again. The European Union, a NATO member which borders Ukraine, will repeat its 2-round presidential election on 4th and 18th May after the Constitutional Court voided the initial ballot in December following accusations of Russian meddling in favor of far-right pro-Russian frontrunner Călin Georgescu. Earlier this month, it banned Georgescu from running again, and George Simeon, leader of Romania's second-largest party, the Alliance for Uniting Romanians (AUR), subsequently became the hard right's replacement candidate. Simeon's AUR organized Wednesday's protest outside the government headquarters in downtown Bucharest, which saw several thousand people gather with a sea of red, blue and yellow flags. Separately, a competing pro-Georgescu rally saw several thousand more protesters gather, where they also cut birthday cakes to mark the former candidate's 63rd birthday. Opinion surveys released earlier this month show Simeon is poised to make it into the runoff vote on 18 May. Thousands of protesters gathered near the Israeli parliament condemning Benjamin Netanyahu's actions for undermining the country's democracy and urging a swift resolution to the war crisis in Gaza. The demonstrators oppose a bill that would increase political influence over judicial appointments. The crowd also called for the release of hostages and for Israel to resume ceasefire negotiations in Gaza. The protests, which erupted last week, were organized by anti-Netanyahu groups, initially mobilized to oppose the Prime Minister's move to dismiss the head of the security agency, Ronen Bar. The government has also initiated proceedings to remove Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara, who has challenged the legality of several Netanyahu policies. Israeli citizens also condemned Zionist actions in continuing airstrikes on Gaza last week, followed by ground operations, which led to a violation of the ceasefire with Hamas. As a result of the war, 251 Israelis have been taken hostage, with 58 still held in Gaza, including 34 Israeli soldiers who have been confirmed dead. NASA researchers, in partnership with CAL FIRE, unveiled an airspace management system to help firefighters and emergency crews better respond to wildfires even during low visibility conditions. The NASA's Advanced Capabilities for Emergency Response Operations (ASERO) project aims to make it easier for aircraft crews, drone operators and firefighters on the ground to share information as they combat blazes. From 17 to 28 March, NASA's ASERO project stationed researchers at multiple strategic locations across the foothills of the Sierra de Salinas Mountains in Monterey County, California. Their mission to test and validate a new portable system that can provide reliable airspace management under poor visual conditions, one of the biggest barriers for aerial wildland firefighting support. The mission was a success.
Yeah, so what this ASERO project aims to do, specifically this phase, is increase situational awareness between pilots of crewed aircraft and uncrewed aircraft. So seeing it come to this ASERO project is very promising for increasing safety and harmony between the different types of aircraft that operate on fires.
NASA's goal for ASERO is to validate this technology so it can be developed for wildland fire crews to use in the field, saving lives and property. The project is managed by NASA's Aerospace Operations and Safety Program and supports the agency's Advanced Air Mobility mission. In our sports segment, Club World Cup winner this year could earn up to $125 million. Stay tuned.
Hai, bersama-sama kami Awatar AI Berita RTM, saya Aaron Lim.
Dan saya Cik Rita. Musim perayaan ini kami ada sedikit pesanan.
Sebelum keluar dari rumah, pastikan pintu dan tingkap dikunci. Jangan lupa tutup suis dan paip air juga.
Periksa kenderaan dulu sebelum memulakan perjalanan.
Rancang perjalanan dan sentiasa berhati-hati ketika memandu. Pakai tali pinggang keledar dan elakkan penggunaan telefon bimbit.
Kalau rasa penat atau mengantuk, rehat sekejap di R&R yang disediakan. Atau berhenti di tempat yang selamat.
Pantau juga anak-anak kecil ketika berhari raya. Adik-adik, jangan main mercun. Bahaya.
Hari raya memanglah makanan sedap-sedap. Tapi makan kena beringat juga. Kurangkan makanan berlemak dan bergula.
Akhir sekali, pada hari raya ini, hargai setiap detik bersama yang tersayang.
Pesanan ikhlas daripada kami di RTM, teman setia anda. Selamat Hari Raya Aidilfitri. Maaf zahir dan batin. Syukuri Syawal.
Syukuri Syawal.
Welcome back. And in sports, FIFA on Wednesday said the winners of this year's 32-team Club World Cup to be held in the US will earn up to $125 million. The world's football's governing body had announced earlier this month a total prize pot of $1 billion for the event, which runs from 14 June to 13 July, significant in the current climate of financial regulation for clubs. About half of the $1 billion total will be divided between all 32 clubs, with the amount per club based on sporting and commercial criteria. This means that clubs such as Manchester City and Real Madrid will receive a greater percentage than smaller clubs in a model FIFA developed with the European Club Association. A further $475 million will be awarded on a performance-related basis, meaning the team with the most wins over a potential 7 matches will bank more cash, with a maximum pot of $125 million available.
And in tennis, Arthur Fils rallied from a set down and overcame troubles with back pain to earn the biggest win of his career by PIF ATP ranking on Wednesday at the Miami Open. The 20-year-old hit 25 winners and overcame back pain to seal a 3-6, 6-3, 6-4 upset win over top seed Alexander Zverev of Germany.
Just as he did in his third-round victory against Francis Tiafoe, Fils reacted to mid-match physical struggles by upping the aggression in his game. After receiving treatment on his back at the end of the first set, he wore down world number 2 Zverev with his powerful hitting for a 2-hour triumph. Having also reached the quarterfinals at the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells earlier this month, Fils is only the third Frenchman to reach the last 8 at both Sunshine Double events in the same year after Yannick Noah and Gael Monfils. Up next for Fils will be Jakub Mensik of the Czech Republic for a spot in the semi-finals. Regardless of the outcome of the match, Fils is set to rise above his career high of number 18 in the ATP rankings after Miami.
In the women's draw, Philippine wildcard Alexandra Ayala pulled off the biggest win of a young career with a stunning 6-2, 7-5 upset of Polish world number 2 Iga Świątek on Wednesday to extend her dream run at the Miami Open into the semi-finals.
The big-hitting 19-year-old showed no signs of intimidation playing against one of her idols and was instead a picture of poise as she dismantled Świątek's serve early on to grab control of the match and never look back. Świątek, who was playing the match with added security after being verbally abused by a spectator at the weekend, failed to hold serve throughout the first set, while Ayala was serving freely as she unleashed winners from all over the court. 5 times Grand Slam champion Świątek hit a staggering 19 unforced errors in the opening set and then received some advice from her coach before briefly leaving the court. In the second set, Ayala managed to overturn a 4-2 deficit and then held a nerve while Świątek tried to serve out the set at 5-4 before ultimately closing it out with her 8th break of the match. For Ayala, the victory over Świątek marked the 3rd Grand Slam winner she had knocked out of the women's draw after earlier wins over Australian Open champion Madison Keys and 2017 French Open champion Yelena Ostapenko.
And that wraps up World Today this time around. Our top story, Trump announces tariff plans of up to 25% on automotive imports. Till then, I'm Brendan Lepal, Melissa Madani from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Thanks for watching and take care.